Good.
And
That's very good.
So, Mr. Chair, we definitely have, by my count, I think 14, so we do have a quorum.
Sorry, everybody.
there we go.
I'll never talk to
All
you.
right, and Michael coming in makes 15.
Let's see, but
For first time, we have a call to order. How about public comments? I see, as usual, we have Eversource on the line. Eddie, you have anything for us today?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. Two quick Eversource updates. The first is we will be hosting our virtually our Q2 meetings with our single points of contact, our community relations staff, and your dedicated community liaisons. We need to accomplish these by the end of June, so you should be hearing from your community relations specialist shortly to get those on the calendar. The topic of the day this time around is going to be hurricane preparedness, since, as you know, hurricane season starts June 1st. And secondly, I'm happy to announce, you may have already heard from your specialists that the Eversource Foundation had kicked off its 2022 giving program fairly recently. Community Relations is once again managing our small grants program. These are available grants ranging from $500 to $2,500 for eligible nonprofits that are 501c3s. And our targeted areas of support are as follows: basic community needs, education, of course, energy and the environment, DE&I, and community development, workforce development, and education development as well. So if there are organizations that are eligible in your respective communities, we would again recognize those and ask that you communicate with your community relations specialists so that you can get them in touch with those organizations. We can share the applications with them and help shepherd them through the review and hopefully approval process. So just wanted to put a plug in for that as well. On a personal note, I wanted to welcome Emily Hultquist. I hope this is not inappropriate, to the region. Emily and I served with the Capital Region Council of Governments for years together. And I just want to put out a shout out to her that she is a truly gifted and creative professional. I had the pleasure of serving with her for many, many years, and really the region is in very good hands. So just wanted to put a plug in for Emily as well. So that's all I've got today.
You thoroughly embarrassed her.
That was not my intent.
Are they going to send out notices on these grants with more specifics, or?
We can, I mean, I can talk with our specialist, and we can send you kind of an overview of the categories as I just outlined, and with a link to our corporate giving webpage. And then you can certainly fan that out to your respective organizations just so that they can contact us. I mean, I can certainly make that ask of the specialist. I mean, I know that I'm doing that. And also just in general, when I meet with my towns, I'm always putting in a plug, because certainly you know best which organizations in your communities are potentially struggling and could really use some additional dollars. So.
If you could send it to Rob and have Rob distribute it to the COG members, that would be helpful.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to?
Live here more, Linda Catalog.
Gordon, are you doing business, or are you? Singing? He's singing?
sound like.
I think he doesn't know he's not muted. All right. Item, Rob, your executive director report.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I apologize for being remote, but yesterday what I thought was just some seasonal pollen issues going on. I came home and my wife was feeling a little off as well, and we have home tests. We took the home test. I came back positive. She came back negative. So long story short, I'm going to take another test today, but obviously on the air on the side of caution, and I am not present because of potentially COVID, which would be my first time that I would have it, as far as I know. So part of my report today is to welcome, I know Eddie had just mentioned Emily Hultquist, but I wanted to welcome, and I wish I was there for this, but I want to welcome Emily and Catherine Faraci. They both have very distinguished careers that they've had at this point. And I can tell you that this region is, and myself, beyond more than pleased that they would consider working with us here. And I think we're in a great position moving forward to kind of bring this region, into into the forefront and make sure that our voice is heard in the state. And I can't, again, it's almost a dream come true to have such what I would call a dream team here. And I welcome them. And, certainly you can have a conversation with them in person today. And so I encourage that. And, if they have anything to say, they can add as well too. But real quick, also wanted to announce that the Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day is June 4th at the Falls Village Public Garage. And we are currently in the process of getting all the tickets out to the participating communities, and we should be good to go there. But if you want to spread the word, and if you have anybody else that you would like me to send the flyers to or any information to, please let me know, and we can certainly do that to get the word out. It's a little bit, we're probably about a week behind normal, and that's just simply because of onboarding 2 new staff. I was certainly sliding backwards over the last couple of months with the amount of work that was coming in that I just didn't have enough time to give. So we're pretty much in a triage mode at this point in time. But again, I'm very happy to have Emily and Catherine, and I think you will be too. That's the end of my report. If anybody has any questions.
Either of you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Emily Holtquist. I truly am so excited to be here. This is I'm so humbled to work with Rob and all of you. My most recent past work experience, I was Director of Policy and Planning for the Capital Region Council of Governments in Hartford. And I grew up in Simsbury, spent a lot of time with my parents when I was young, coming out this way and really loving this area. So I am thrilled to be doing this work here. And I have an urban planning background. Obviously grew up in this area, and really with that education wanted to come back here and make a difference. So I'm really looking forward to being with all of you and hearing what your visions are for the future of the region, and working with Rob and Casey and
Yes,
Sarah.
and some of you may know that they refer to me as Casey, so that's also my alias. But I'm actually a former DOT employee, been with the agency for about 35 years, and came on board to work with Rob and this great team. And I'm looking forward to actually looking at grant opportunities for the region, whether it be federal or state. So I'm looking forward to meeting with all of you and see what your interests are, where your priorities are, because I know there's some programs that are coming down the pike that I'd like to be able to just be ready to go, so that we can actually tap into it, and not wanting to do it in a vacuum, and kind of assess what your needs are within each municipality. So thank you very much for having me.
And I can tell you, for the committee that did help with the interviews, it was easy. We were so happy that we got both these folks. I mean, the interviews, we had good people, all the good people who interviewed, these were the 2 top candidates. And the fact that they joined us, we are really very pleased. So
Happy to be here.
welcome.
Thank you.
Next up, Mike, I saw that you're on, Mr. Muzinski. I don't know, is Betsy on?
I'm here.
Are you there, Betsy? Okay. I don't know how you want to do this, but you're both on the agenda to talk about legislative session, and then of course Mr. Chris, who knows more about the legislature than any of us, is welcome to chime in and help as needed.
Sounds good. I'll let Mike and Betsy do their thing. Mike, we become great friends this last legislative session, even closer, I think, this time around.
Yes, certainly. I always appreciate all of the insight that you all provide. Betsy, if you want, I can just touch on the budget and then the education finance, and if you want to touch on the taxes, and then we can kind of get into the other bills.
Mike, sorry to interrupt, but do you want me to share my screen on anything, or are you going to share? Or
nope,
okay.
I don't have anything. I did, and I saw that you did send out our pass fail list, so I appreciate that. That is our annual important bills list that's broken down just to indicate what was the final outcome of them. You will see that some of them noted that even though the bill in its substance didn't pass, it was incorporated into the budget for different bills. We tried to note that as well. Those certainly weren't all of the bills that we tracked. I think we tracked over 1,000 bills, but those were just some of the highlighted bills. So in regards to the budget, and I see Representative Horn is on here as well. I'm sure she has a lot to provide as well. The budget has about $24 billion in spending, so it's about a 6% increase from previous years. In essence, it does maintain various municipal state aid, does slightly increase tiered pilot by about $3 million, increases adult education by about $1 million. In regards to making excess payments to the pension fund to reduce the unfunded pension liability, there was a substantial amount, which was about $3.5 billion that was made to reduce the pension liability. But in the grand scheme of things, it's only about 12%. So there's still a lot to go in regards to that. In regards to ECS, certainly there was a number of bills throughout the session, most prominent being House Bill 5283, which would have made some significant adjustments to ECS, really looking at equity. Even though some of the provisions were incorporated into the final budget, most of the substance of House Bill 5283 wasn't incorporated. In essence, the ECS formula within the budget continues to maintain the phasing in with some modifications. So underfunded towns will be fully funded by 2028. Overly funded towns will continue their decrease. It doesn't accelerate those overfunded towns, which is something we've always been mindful of. So it continues that until 2030. So it holds everyone harmless essentially for the next year. What it does modify is in 24 and 25, it modifies the grant adjustment, so the percentages will change a little bit. So that's just a small change. We're going to be putting out some information, as well as the fiscal note kind of depicts what those specific adjustments have been in the budget. In regards to alliance districts, again, this was another standalone bill that was incorporated into the budget. It designates for another 5 years another list of alliance districts. It expands it from 33 to 36 and does make some modifications to the base year, which I know it doesn't impact a lot of or anybody in this area, but for those newly assigned as alliance districts, the way that it was originally proposed, it would have actually shorted them significantly. So we're able to work with several members to get that adjusted in the final budget. In regards to excess cost grant, special education, there was two related proposals in the budget rather. So it modifies the excess cost grant formula. So when the grant isn't fully funded, it creates a tiered reimbursement based on the town's equalized net grant list. A tiered kind of program is something that the legislature has kind of adopted in a variety of different areas. So currently the reimbursement's about 66%. This tiered structure based on wealth would either be 70%, 73%, or a little over 76%. So lower equalized net grant list increases the grant award, and obviously the converse is true. It does require SDE to continue another provision. It's a study, but it was part of an original bill, which was Senate Bill 232, which this requires SDE to study modifying the excess cost grant threshold. So that 4.5%, SDE now has to review and study modifying that again on a tiered system, either 3.5, 3, or 2.5%. So hopeful that we can engage with the department on that effort. As I know a number of you have referenced, and I know a couple of others in other areas have also referenced, that wealth maybe isn't the best factor to utilize when trying to fund special education. In regards to HVAC work, the budget appropriated about $150 million to assist towns with HVAC upgrades. It's part of the school construction program. 75 million of that is bonded. 75 million of that is from ARPA. It does allow reimbursement for HVAC upgrades. It's reimbursed on a tiered structure, so 20 to 80% based on the community's wealth. There's also another provision. Air quality within schools was a hot topic within this legislative session. There was a couple of different bills in regards to this. Beginning in 2024 and every 5 years, every school will have to do an HVAC and air quality evaluation report. So that's going to be coming up soon. So rather than me just kind of droning on with all of my other bills, maybe this is a good segue to Betsy to talk about some of the motor vehicle tax and assessment, the provisions of the budget, and then we can kind of get into the other bills if that works.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. I know there was some discussion before the meeting formally started. As you've probably seen from the various press releases from the governor's office and the different caucuses, this legislature definitely passed a significant number of tax cuts, including an extension of the gas tax holiday through November 30th, 2022, enacting a $250 per child tax credit for low and middle income families, and increasing the earned income tax credit. As you also know, they lowered the tax cap on motor vehicles from 45 to 32.46. And this was something that, from the get-go of the legislative session, we knew was going to be a top priority for governor's office as well as for Senate Democrats and others. And there is $100 million, or a little more than that, included in the budget to fully reimburse municipalities for any loss of tax revenue. We are concerned, however, that going forward, if the legislature faces some difficult budget years, that it's going to be difficult to maintain that reimbursement. I know there have been a lot of questions about how the reimbursement has worked, and I know we've reached out to Martin Heft from OPM to provide some clarification, but I guess I understand from your discussion prior to this meeting that there are still some questions. So as I understand it, as I mentioned, the bill lowers the mill rate cap to 32.46, and the grants to the towns are calculated using that rate cap and then the preceding fiscal year's tax levy data. So some people were looking at the assessed value and not the tax levy data. And the reimbursement represents the difference then between the mill rate that was imposed for that year and the loss of tax revenue. So there was also a question about the fire districts, and I know we've also reached out to Martin Heft about that, and it's our understanding that the fire districts will be paid directly now instead of through the municipality. So again, I know there are questions on that, and I'm certainly not the person in a position to answer that because I think it is very confusing, but maybe it's something, if there continue to be questions, that CCM and COS can do a webinar with OPM on to try to provide that clarification. In addition to lowering the mill rate cap, there was also a companion bill that was a priority of the governor's, and that is to change the motor vehicle assessment process. And this was done, there had been apparently discussions for several months between OPM and the assessors organization to look at different ways of modifying the process to provide more certainty to taxpayers regarding what the property tax would be on their motor vehicles, and also to reduce the burden on assessors and make it easier for them. So essentially what it does is requires towns to value motor vehicles based on the manufacturer's suggested retail price and a 20-year depreciation schedule rather than the schedule of values that's annually recommended by OPM. It also, instead of having commercial vehicles assessed in that manner, it moves commercial vehicles to the personal property declarations. And we had a lot of discussion about this with OPM, and there were a lot of concerns, particularly for small towns, that it really wasn't going to realize additional tax revenues that they assume. Their thought is that by moving them to the personal property tax declarations, you're going to have a list of those commercial vehicles, and that you're going to be able to determine whether or not a business should be reporting additional personal property that maybe they've just failed to do. So there are a lot of concerns that it is going to impose a burden on towns to do more audits to try to chase those personal property tax declarations down. But again, the assessors believe that this would be something that would provide them with an access to additional revenues by virtue of getting more people to complete those personal property declarations. So it also exempts from the property tax snowmobiles, all-terrain vehicles, and utility trailers used exclusively for personal property, and make some other changes regarding supplemental property taxes and when the towns receive information on those. We've been, we had a number of conversations, as I mentioned, with OPM and the governor's office on this, as well as CCM. And they assured us that if there is any kind of revenue loss because of these changes, they will look to make us whole in the next biennium. However, there is an election, so we're not sure whether or not that's going to happen. But it is something that, again, was a top priority of the governor's office. In addition to changes to the motor vehicle assessment process, there was a bill, and I know this, some of the towns in this COG had raised concerns about the inability to locate assessors or have people that were ready to become assessors access training and the examination. So we worked with Senator Whitcoast's office, and the legislature did approve Senate Bill 190, which requires the assessor certification committee to ensure that assessor training and exams are available either online or at a variety of different locations throughout the state rather than just at UConn. And it also requires OPM to develop career pathways and make recommendations regarding career pathways for tax assessors, finance directors, and other local officials so that we can begin to address some of the shortages in those areas. So that is all I have on the taxes. Well, I should mention there is another property tax exemption that was a big concern, which was adopted. And that is House Bill 5168. This has been a kind of a perennial issue. There's been Connecticut Supreme Court decisions on this, but it has to do with property used for charitable purposes and whether or not it is exempt from property taxes. Under the existing law, the exemption was limited to property that was made available for certain uses, such as substance abuse facilities, orphanages, halfway houses that provided temporary housing and that did not receive any subsidy from the state or federal government. There's a lot of confusion about that. And as I mentioned, there was a Supreme Court decision that indicated that, in fact, these temporary, even if it wasn't temporary and it was permanent housing, that it should be eligible for property tax exemption. The Office of Fiscal Analysis has indicated that they believe this may result in a 1.9 million loss of tax revenue on a statewide basis. So it is a concern, but there was a ton of support for it in the legislature. And, again, it basically codifies the Connecticut Supreme Court decision. So we didn't have a lot of opportunity to oppose that. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Mike.
Thanks, Betsy. I think this might be better to kind of go back and forth. So beyond the budget, taxes and all that, certainly be happy to answer any questions. Moving on to some other bills, in regards to public safety bills and municipal law type bills, House Bill 5417, which was the juvenile justice bill, passed. There were several bills to address juvenile justice this past legislative session. This was the one that made it through the process. It makes a lot of adjustments. Some people think it goes too far. Some people think it doesn't go far enough. It makes adjustments to the juvenile court system, expands availability of programs for juveniles, and part of the budget does incorporate some additional funding for youth service bureaus and other programs. It does expand the amount of hours in which a juvenile can be held by police. It does allow for GPS monitoring in certain situations, and in particular after a second motor vehicle crime. It expands the juvenile probation system, and then in particular allows the police chief or first selectman to be notified when an individual within their town fails a background check. That was something I think has been floating around for a number of years as well, but that made its way into that final bill. There were also some modifications to the police accountability law, and I don't know if Representative Horn is still on, certainly want to praise her for all of her efforts in regards to this, in particular, Senate Bill 135, which modifies the police department accreditation and allows police departments to now either be CLIA accredited or post accredited. Certainly being CLIA accredited, while it is a gold standard, there's a lot of costs and administrative hurdles associated with it. So now there's the opportunity to be either, which again, appreciate all of her work on that. There were some modifications in regards to what types of vehicles need dash cameras. That has been clarified as well. Within the area of public health, one bill in particular, the House Bill 5044, which is the Opioid Advisory Committee. Again, this is the result of the opioid settlement. It creates a 32-member advisory board, 16 of which need to represent municipalities. We were successful to ensure that there is a municipal co-chair along with the state co-chair on this advisory group. It does allow for reasonable attorney fees to be used with some of the settlement funds. There is a provision in there that requires towns to report on what they are doing with some of the settlement funds. So there is a little bit of a requirement. We'll be fleshing that out later on. The governor's lead bill 5045 did pass. So it gradually reduces the threshold in which local public health officials need to notify or investigate the issues of lead within residential buildings or structures. The budget does appropriate $30 million in ARPA to assist towns to implement this. I believe it's going to be a grant. I'd have to look back at the particulars on that. And then the last area that I'll touch on is in regards to labor issues. Certainly this year was we still had a number of labor related issues that we had to contend with, probably the most prominent being Senate Bill 313, which is the firefighter cancer bill. You know, as drafted, it would certainly be devastating for towns and cities, which it would have created a presumption under workers' comp that if a firefighter contracts cancer, that is work related. In addition, there was a number of other requirements that were included, continuation of health benefits for an employee and family. Ultimately, we were able to work with the firefighters to work out a compromise. It's now outside of workers' compensation, and we really relied back on the 2016 legislation that we negotiated, really relying on the firefighter cancer relief fund. The budget appropriates an additional $80 million into that. There's some additional, now that the firefighters can now utilize the program, hopefully more firefighters will actually see a benefit associated with it. It does require towns, I believe by 2024, to start paying $10 per firefighter annually to the firefighter cancer fund. This would only be for those eligible firefighters. So those would be interior rated. They would have to, be non-smokers, all the things that they would need to be eligible to receive benefits under the fund, that those are the only firefighters that need to actually contribute. All the other gear requirements and problematic pieces have been removed. This is still a conversation that's going to be evolving throughout the summer, likely, that we're going to be having with the firefighters. So look to next year. We're hopeful to ensure that the state has more of a contribution or a method in place to ensure that they can provide in a sustainable fashion into this fund, as well as look at some of the other ancillary things that were addressed in the underlying bill. Two other bills, Senate Bill 212, the perennial issue regarding pension offset, which would prohibit offsetting a pension when an employee is receiving partial or permanent disability under workers' comp. Again, this was a conversation that was part of our firefighter conversation. It didn't move forward, but again, it's a perennial issue that we spent a lot of time on, and it didn't pass either chamber. Then one other bill, Senate Bill 321, which would expand PTSD benefits for all employees. This did pass the Senate, but wasn't taken up in the House. It would have utilized the framework that we negotiated a couple of years ago, where it still required the list of critical incidents, only narrowed it to 52 weeks of benefits. It had the prevention requirements and training requirements. So towns and cities are already pretty much exposed already, as it already includes firefighters, police, EMS, all the first responders. It really would have had a tremendous impact on the private sector, in particular hospitals. So this was a bill that we had monitored, but we weren't actively engaged upon. But this is going to be an issue that's going to evolve in the coming years. So long as the critical incidents don't get changed, or the amount of weeks that an individual can receive the benefits, I think we're in good shape going forward. So those are the bills I was going to cover, and I'm happy to turn it back over to Betsy.
All right, just quickly, as you probably also heard in the press, the environment had a banner year in terms of number of initiatives that were adopted. I know this COG has been very involved in trash to energy issues, and certainly both COST and CCM have identified that as a big issue this session. There were a number of stewardship bills that would have created stewardship programs to handle the management of certain hard to handle items such as tires, gas cylinders, and packaging. The only one that did end up passing was a bill that created a stewardship program for gas cylinders. And that is supposed to be part of in effect by October 1, 2025. There was also several bills that would have supported efforts to provide funding to municipalities, regional waste authorities, and other nonprofits to support local efforts to reduce solid waste and expand capacity for anaerobic digestion and things like that. There was, as part of the budget, did end up creating a recurring funding source for deep sustainable materials management program, and that will be used to fund grants, loans, technical assistance, waste characterization studies, and other initiatives, and to support those waste reduction programs that may be launched by municipalities and other entities. It also allows a portion of the $5 million that was authorized back in 2021 to be utilized for contracting with independent third parties with expertise in the field of solid waste management and infrastructure, including anaerobic digestion. All of this is really focused on the fact that at this point, with the impending closure of MIRA, that we're really truly facing a crisis in solid waste management. And I think Don Stein would agree, and others, that this was the first year that legislators really seemed to understand that we needed to do something. Unfortunately, they just felt that there wasn't much that they could do to address this. The governor's office clearly was not supporting efforts to provide funding to upgrade the MIRA facility. And so we're kind of left with the only option available is to focus on shipping solid waste management out of state. And again, I think people really understand the problems with that. So they did create a trash to energy working group, which will include representatives of MIRA, of COST, of CCM, legislators. But the thinking is that the legislature really wants to take control over how the state is managing solid waste. There was a lot of concern that DEEP has really mishandled this, and as a result, we're in this particular predicament right now. And so, although working groups are sometimes a way to say, you know, we won't do a bill, but we'll do a working group. In this sense, I do think that this working group will be very much focused on trying to identify some short and long-term recommendations to address solid waste management in this state. So we are hoping to have that start to meet fairly soon, and we'll be making an appointment as others will be too. So hopefully that will provide a pathway forward to address some of these issues. In addition to the trash to energy issues, there was a lot of focus on electric vehicles. And Senate Bill 4, the Clean Air Act, includes a number of provisions to reduce emissions and improve air quality, including municipalities will be able to require a certain percentage of parking spaces in new construction to be equipped with either EV charging stations or charging station infrastructure. It exempts from property taxes certain EV charging stations and fuel cell vehicle refueling equipment and zero emission school buses. And there's a significant change with respect to school buses. So it allows that you could have a 10-year school transportation contract if the contract includes at least 1 zero emission school bus. And it sets a very aggressive target for moving from diesel to electric school buses. I know in talking to the School Transportation Association, they think it's doable, but it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be a huge undertaking. And so we'll have more on that at a later date. In addition to some of these issues, there were some pesticide issues regarding the application near lakes and what kind of notices are supposed to be provided to landowners that are on the lakes or other water bodies. And it also there's a bill that would prohibit the use of a certain chemical on golf courses for non-agricultural use. So those issues tend to be, very controversial, but again, there's some movement on those. And then also on road salt, there's a number of communities that are impacted by road salt contamination, and this is affecting their drinking wells. And so there was a bill that was included in the budget that would expand the use of Green Snow Pro training to reduce the application of road salt and to minimize runoff. And then there's also some other provisions in there that would affect people that are trying to install water softeners, which can also exacerbate sodium chloride issues in wells. In housing, last year there was a very big housing bill adopted. This year, most of the housing bills fell to the wayside. There is, however, a bill that passed that would require municipalities with a population of 25,000 or more to create a fair rent commission in their community. And there is existing law that authorizes towns to have a fair rent commission, but this was something that the Speaker Ritter wanted, and so it was adopted. And under the existing law, Fair Rent Commission can actually receive and investigate complaints that the rent increases are too high. They can issue subpoenas, hold hearings, etc. Initially, the bill would have impacted municipalities with a population of 14,000 or more. They did recognize that may be too burdensome for the very small towns, but it is going to be interesting to see whether these things are utilized in these communities and what kind of staff and resources are required to manage them. I will just remind people affordable housing, again, is a big issue in this state. There's been a ton of press coverage, a ton of conversation at the General Assembly. And as you know, the affordable housing plans that municipalities are required to file are due July 1st. So I would encourage you, they are keeping a very close eye on those plans. And I think that if we don't have a good showing, and that if towns have not taken this effort seriously, we're going to be faced with additional legislation to mandate various studies, such as the Fair Share Housing Bill that was considered earlier this session. So that's it for me. There's a ton. I mean, I can't believe how many bills have been adopted in what is probably the shortest session on record, but.
I think there were more bills in this short session than there were in the regular session Sundays. I've been looking at them all, but I just wanted to thank Betsy and Mike for all their hard work and CCM and costs and everyone that's involved there, because it was great working with you again this session. I look forward to the next session and much longer, many more bills. But I did have a couple follow-up questions that I don't know if we're completely followed through on, but we were trying to figure out, if you remember right, on the special education bill, the original proposal was to go from 75 to 85. As we all know, they typically fund at 66. But I know that was presented by Senator Looney for that to go to 85, proposal to 85, but I think that died as a whole. But did they make any corrections to get the schools up to the 75% reimbursement?
So, yeah, the higher level of 85 was not enacted. What they did is it's that tiered system again, very similar to a lot of other bills. So when it's not fully funded, you have that tiered system based on the equalized net grand list of either 70, 73, or 76% reimbursement.
Okay. And then on 232, I didn't see where that working group included municipal involvement for that working group for that study.
Is that the solid waste one?
No, that's the education, the 4.5
Excess cost.
excess
Yeah.
cost, sorry.
The excess cost, so that's in the budget, so that the 232 didn't pass, but it's in the budget. It's an SDE study. So
Okay.
while there's no formal appointments from various groups, we're hopeful that CCM, along with the other interested parties, can take a proactive involvement with the agency.
And I remember on the motor vehicle cap, the reimbursement, the original language that came out in the bill was a 5-year phase out. So they must have eliminated that piece, and they're going to try to roll the dice and see if they can.
So Senator Looney had actually proposed a 5-year rollout, and that bill was before the Planning and Development Committee. The governor's proposal had always fully reimbursed municipalities, although there was some discussion as to whether the amount included in the budget would have fully reimbursed municipalities. So the Appropriations Committee is the one that settled on the 32.46 because they felt that they could accommodate 100 million to fully reimburse municipalities in this year's budget. So, but yeah, I mean, they're clearly, I know Senator Looney, and he hasn't made any bones about not being upfront about this. He definitely feels that there shouldn't be a motor vehicle tax, and that the reimbursement should be phased out because, you know, the concern, how, as you know, would shift a greater burden to homeowners and businesses. So
If I remember, he's still pushing, and I imagine we'll see this in the larger session. He's pushing to phase out motor vehicle tax altogether and shift it to 100% assessed value of homes and personal property.
he does throw that bill out there. He doesn't put, you know, the weight of his office behind it, fortunately, but, you know, he is a progressive thinker, and that is something that he feels very strongly about. That so it is going to be, in fact, one year he had proposed a statewide property tax, or that the car taxes would be remitted to the state, and then they would divvy them up based on some formula that definitely gave more money to the poor urban areas and less money to any wealthier, smaller towns. So it is a concern, and that is his mindset.
Yeah, I think those two issues, you know, going through the session, I think that issue, and I truly believe that, you know, as we all know, affordable housing is not going anywhere. And that's going to be constantly haunting us. It's, you know, it's almost as bad as the RST programs and, you know, the other things that we fight back thresholds on prevailing wage. And I think it's just going to be an annual thing or biannual thing where they constantly bring those back into play, where we're going to have to constantly pay attention, because I know there are a lot of chatter after some of those bills failed on how they're already starting to work on rewording those to get those back in. So I think we definitely have to be aggressive in watching those and being prepared to speak out against many of those bills, unfortunately.
I would agree. You know, they have some very aggressive organizations that are promoting some of these affordable housing mandates, and they are not always in sync. And so they're approaching them from different angles, but, and one group is also litigating if they feel that a town is shirking its duty to meet the 10% affordable housing threshold. They are bringing the courts to bear on it. So it is a big issue. And I think we really have to focus on that 10% threshold and getting people to understand that it is not an achievable threshold in many, many small towns because of the lack of water and wastewater infrastructure and the amount of buildable lots in the area. And for whatever reason, people just don't seem to wrap their arms around that concern.
I know early in their session, and I don't know if Betsy or Mike can answer this, but they had talked about possibly putting their working group to talk about those particular issues, because that continues to be an ongoing problem. It continues to be, as you know, I continue to include that blue ribbon committee study in every single testimony I do, so that they can continue to be reminded of their own thoughts on overdevelopment of rural areas, lack of mass transportation, lack of infrastructure, funding for those, and what that would do to small municipalities and changing that. But I know early on in the session, there was some talk between some legislators and local leaders about wanting to assemble a working group with the governor's office to talk more about that 10% threshold. That's going to be, it's basically unattainable. I mean, and they admit that that was admitted back in 93, 94 by the state, that 10% was probably unachievable, but they still set it in play. And I was wondering, did you hear anything about them possibly putting together before or during the next session, at least a working group?
Well, there is this broader working group, the Commission on Connecticut's Development and Future, and it is looking at a number of affordable housing issues. In fact, there's a meeting this afternoon, and I serve on this committee about the affordable housing plans, and it is something I intend to bring up. And I don't know whether the full commission has talked about it at all. You know, unfortunately, it got very bogged down because of the whole concern about the Affordable Housing Appeals Act, 830G, and the people in Fairfield County are just so concerned about that, that everyone thought that the study bill on the threshold was more of a way to get at eliminating the whole Affordable Housing Appeals Act. And I think that ended up bogging it down. So, you know, it's unfortunate because you do have groups on both sides and they're both extremely polarizing. And there is, I think, a reasonable middle ground on this. And so I think that's what we need to do, is have more voices, just talk about what is that reasonable middle ground and how we can assist our towns in getting there, rather than, because even Representative Rojas, the House Majority Leader, has said, you know, there's times when you need a stick and it's time to, you know, we've tried the carrot, it doesn't work. And so they have had proposals that would allow OPM to withhold discretionary aids such as clean water funds and STEEP funds if you don't meet these certain affordable housing thresholds. So it is an issue I think we need to get more involved in, get more towns talking about some reasonable approaches to this.
If there's any way that we can help or I can help, please let me know. I have tons and tons of data on this issue.
Will do.
Anybody else have any questions? We're on Zoom. All right, thank you, Betsy, and thank you, Mike. And I know you're probably breathing a sigh of relief that session's over for now, and next year you'll be back at it again. So thanks for all your hard work.
Not a problem.
Thanks, Mike.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Crystal has the biggest notebooks of bills I've ever seen.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Info sharing, why don't we go around the table here first and then we call on people on Zoom. So we'll start with Denise. You can be first.
Update on town stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so right now we're going to a public hearing for the courthouse turning into a boutique hotel. That's a big deal right now in our town. The courthouse that's been there for, gosh, I think 200 years or so. Yeah, a long time. There's a little bit of from what I hear, a little bit of opposition because the addition that they have to build cannot match the original structure. In order to get tax credits from the state of Connecticut, it has to have a demarcation of the new and the old. So once they explain that, I think that'll be, will help people, be more in favor of it. They're also going to have a rooftop bar. So there's some people that are, it's Noodle field. It's not, we're slow to change. So I'm hoping that actually does go through, because otherwise the building really right now is in such disrepair. I can't imagine who else would be willing to spend $9 to $10 million like this group is willing to spend. So that's, let's see what else. Litchfield Hills Road Race, you heard in the paper today that the borough of Litchfield banned the flag. So we're going to try to figure out a way to still have that happen. There's a little bit of pushback there. Memorial Day parades are on, my first one since I've been in office. It's been 3 years and we'll be having that. And tonight is my budget town meeting. We're going to be going down, we're proposing a 0.8 mil reduction. There are some, people that say, well, some of that is because of the revaluation of motor vehicles. But in the last 5 years, we've gone down 100 vehicles each year. And this year we showed a 500 increase in the amount of motor vehicles. So it just shows that we are growing our grand list. We have almost $10 million more in the real estate part of the grand list, which is pretty significant. And I think with this boutique hotel coming in, which has never been on the tax rolls, and the Rosehaven old nursing home, that it's going to be turned into Belden House, which is a 31-room B&B that they just closed on that. So that's going to be bringing back to the tax rolls. And then the solar project that Torrington and Litchfield are sharing, which is coming to fruition now, 32 million or 36 million, 19.8 megawatt project. It will be pretty significant, hopefully, as tax dollars come in and right, yeah, and jobs. So that's it for Litchfield, I think, for now.
So the city of Torrington, we're still working through our budget. Budget adoption for us is always a little bit later, decided by our Board of Finance, not requiring maybe the referendums at this month, towns do. Our Torrington High School middle school project should start construction this summer. So we're pretty excited about that. Prospect Street is also scheduled to go under construction. Reconstruction, that's reconstruction of the road, implementation of bike lane, new sidewalks. It's a great project, great connector road, I would say, between Route 4 and Main Street. So looking forward to that construction. Animal control facility is under construction. We've got a lot of projects in and around the city. If you're driving through, you're probably going to get steered around some of that construction, but we're in good shape.
Norfolk passed their budget Monday night at our annual town meeting. We had a 0.9 mil increase, which is about 3.3%. We have a 13-acre solar array going in at our transfer station. It's going to produce about 5 megawatts of energy. We should be having a town meeting on that hopefully by mid-June. And also our town is pretty much a construction zone with 2 bridges and a new water main going in. So it's a lot of projects.
Let's see, Goshen, last night we had our public hearing on the budget. Our town meeting is the 25th. We are going to lower the mill rate from 20.6 down to 19.6, so that's 1 mil. So that'd be great for, since we're an age in town, and I think the average age in Goshen is 57 years old. So it's going to help a lot of the elderly that are they're on pensions and everything with inflation. So it'd be nice to lower the taxes for them. We got the new farmers market that opened up on 63. Rich and Kara Wengel opened up the new farmers market, which is nice. They sell plants and there will be selling vegetables and everything. It's really nice. Spoke with the fire chief. We're going to be organizing a new search and rescue using infrared drones. So we're going to be just like the state police. We'll be able to search people that are hiking or any bodies that are floating some lakes. And we do have a lot of the toys here in Goshen, with snowmobiles and jet skis and airboats, and so and the dive team that gets called out to ban them all the time, so hopefully this new search and rescue drone team is going to be really nice. Plus it's going to attract a lot of the younger people that want to join the fire department because they're all high tech now. So that's what we're doing to make that happen. Everything else is going quite good in Goshen.
Except your bears.
We got our bears. The bears have made a complaint to they're in the chamber meeting this morning about the bears. There's too many bears here in Goshen. We need some type of permit system for farmers or big landowners that have these problems. They're ruining the crops, they're ruining everything, the beehives. And without bees, we're not gonna eat. So we need to do something about the bears. What else we have here? Animal control started May 1st. We had some monies in capital, around 134,000 in capital to go towards the construction for Torrington. I moved that into unassigned capital non-recurring. We used 112,000 of that for public works to buy towards buying a new truck. So it was a big savings there. So everything's going good. We're just waiting for the referendum on the merger, and if we could get that going on, it'd be a big plus.
Right, I didn't mention that, the school merger.
And school merger, yes, I attended Chris Leone's slideshow a couple times yesterday, so it was really nice. And he does a great job, and hopefully we have this merger with Litchfield, Region 6 and Litchfield, everything goes smooth. Yeah, I think it'll be a big savings for all of us.
Todd, nothing goes smooth.
I know, but I like smooth.
You're in the wrong business.
Correct, nothing is smooth. And in Roxbury, we had our public hearing budget. We're proposing going from 15.4 to 15.25, which is a nice little win. Going through building 2 bridges as well, one larger project than the other, and work with Public Works to save some money to start doing some of our own. Have Public Works trucks going out, some coming in, starting to look at spending some of this capital money. Our ARPA funds are out, and that's helping with some of the infrastructure money as well. And Memorial Day heading up, and I'm jealous that you have a town jet ski. Other than that, everything is going wonderful.
Earbuds, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a trip. I gotta know how to get that in the budget. No, other than that, Roxbury is going fantastic. I'm enjoying it.
Well, in Harwinton, we're always busy. Very happy legislation is over now, session. Got working on a bunch of things, but we have a bridge study that we just finished doing for all of our bridges within the community by Cardinal Engineering, which is from COG. Great company. If anyone hasn't worked with them, work with them. They're phenomenal, very affordable, put together a really good, 10-15-year plan, plus a maintenance plan for all of our bridges going forward. So we can budget, that going forward. So that's looking well. We have our town meeting coming up on Tuesday, vote on ours, and the mill rate will be set on the 26th. So the Board of Finance usually waits now. After we have the whole debacle with the state not passing their budget, we kind of hold off on setting our mill rate to the end of May, but we'll hopefully get the budget passed on the 17th, which lowers the mill rate from 28.8 to 28.3. So we're looking at that, which is good. Our War Memorial project, which we got steep grant funding for, but due to COVID was kind of held up, is scheduled to start after Memorial Day. So we're hoping for that new project to go in. Harwinton and Burlington joined together to share our sports fields and sports programs due to lack of enrollment as we have lack of enrollment at the schools, we have lack of enrollment in youth sports. There's a lot of competing programs between the two towns, and unfortunately, both selectmen had to step in to try to set aside these outside organizations that were fighting for kids and pulling them from each program, and just opened up all field use between the two towns and our DPWs so that we could hopefully maximize use of all the fields. Doug and I were asked, and I believe we're both participating in a dump tank, if anyone's interested, for Johnny Cake Music Fest. That's coming up in a couple weeks. Up in Burlington. There'll be a huge line. I'm positive. Don was in the front. Denise was already hopping in the car.
When is that?
Opened it up to local leaders. And that was it. Everybody got in line. I think Senator Looney will be there. It's crazy.
Can somebody send that out in a big group email?
I will definitely send that out. I'd love to see y'all there. We are also looking to extend the water main down to our town garage. Our town garage was built years ago, and we have a well system down there, and now we have an opportunity to join on to the water main that goes past by Torrington Water Company. So we're looking to use possibly some ARPA money to extend that down there. And lastly, we did hire a new rec director, a new assistant rec director, so we're excited about moving into a new age with our recreation programs, which will all be online now. And all the registrations, all the fees, everything will be online. We went with MyRec. If I think a lot of the towns in the area are using it, and Arlington is probably one of the last ones to join on board to use it, but
It's
it's a great program, very affordable, and so we're gonna move forward with that. But other than that, just keep working, keep moving, so.
Yeah, Morris, we have our budget hearing tonight. We're going from a 24.63 down to 24.26 mill rate. It's 0.37 drop. And then the 25th, we have a town meeting to approve the ARPA package and also to purchase a new fire engine, which we're going to utilize about 150,000 of the ARPA funds for the fire engine. The rest coming from capital non-recurring and the fund balance, and plus 50,000 from the fire company. So that's nice. Then I think June 2nd will be our town meeting to hopefully pass our budget. And we do have Cardinal just submitted a bridge for us into the local bridge program. And hopefully that is funded and we'll move forward. So that's it.
Washington, similar to Matt's point, we're one big construction zone. We've got 3 bridges going. We've got the DOT tearing up 3 miles of Route 47. So that's causing a little bit of some challenges. Some very passionate residents on the roads where the bridges are and things of that nature. We had hoped to potentially lower our mill rate, but we got hit through the region with a population or enrollment increase that added $600,000 to our bottom line. So we're going to stay flat at 14.25, and then there's going to be no increase. But other than that, everything's going well.
We're a little bit ahead of the others. We had our town meeting last week. The budget passed. There was 0.1 mil decrease. So it's basically flat budget. We were fortunate. Norfolk was not so fortunate. We had a 0% increase at the regional high school, whereas Norfolk and Colebrook got hit pretty hard with tax increases there. The good news is that our housing trust, which is a 501c3, we were able to get a CDBG grant for them. So they were able to close on the property. They're starting a design of a package to go out to bid on 20 units of affordable housing right behind our shopping center. But we use David Berto, which I know a lot of the towns have used, and the guy's phenomenal. So we're hoping this fall to go out to bid and then come in with a package and go to the state to see what kind of grants we can get to start for that project. We have our broadband study going forward with a company called Certex, who's working for a couple of the other towns in the region to look at what the real cost of bringing fiber optic high-speed broadband to the town would be. I mentioned at the last meeting, we have an organizing session next week. We're going to try to do a meeting for the selectmen who are interested or are not getting fiber optics through Optimum to see if we can do something collaborative to get high-speed internet into the region. And what that would cost, how we do it, we're not sure, but the more towns who buy in, the more collaboration we do, hopefully it gets more affordable and we can look for ways to do that. More to follow on that after we have our meeting next week. And beyond that, we're slowly spending ARPA money. We're being very cautious with it, but we are doing some smaller projects. We've helped nonprofits in town and that sort of thing. The biggest thing we're trying to do, once I get an agreement with Winstead on extending the water line into town, is we'll spend some ARPA money to bring the water line to where the housing trust is going to build their units into the shopping center. We have the sewer line there now, but the water line, we have a separate agreement that we're still negotiating with Winstead. So that's the news from Park Hampstead. Somebody have a list of who's on Zoom?
We have Kent.
Jean, you there? You're muted.
Yes, sorry about that. Apologize. I think my camera's turning on, maybe. Oh, that's annoying. You guys can hear me okay? So as with every other town, a lot going on. Our our budget town meeting is the 20th. And we'll be having a flat mill rate. The cell tower is up, has nothing on it currently, but it is constructed up on top of Cedar Mountain. Haven't heard too much buzz about that, fortunately. Our Memorial Day parade is on, and I think this is the last year that the Legion is going to be running and hosting it. I think they want to turn it over to the town, so this is sort of a transition year. The most exciting news is we signed our contract with Mather Corporation for the phase 1 of the streetscape program, which is basically from the monument to the railroad tracks and a little bit of 341 west out to the concrete bridge. They're looking at basically the granite curbing is the challenge to make sure that they get as quickly as possible, but we're looking at starting probably in the next month and a half. And they've committed to, keeping businesses open, accessible, safe, and all that. So this is 14 years in the making. So it's pretty exciting for our town. And the phase 2 is moving along probably exponentially faster than the phase 1 process did. So they may happen right one after another. We have a new social services director that has hit the ground running. We have a new park and rec director who has hit the ground running ×2. He has been just a complete taskmaster. He actually came to us from Kent, New York, which is kind of funny. But we're also going to be bringing on that MyRac online registration, which families are already excited about, and we're not even implemented yet. He was out fixing ball fields yesterday. Apparently our ball fields are in pretty rough shape. Our pool is in very, very rough shape. So that's going to be the next sort of big hot topic that comes down the pike. We did move our town meeting to a Zoom only for the 20th, just because the numbers across the state are only going in the wrong direction every day, it seems. Hoping this is our final Zoom only town meeting. And those are sort of the high points.
Maggie from Heartland.
Good morning. We're getting ready for our annual meeting on Monday. We have a new blight ordinance and a proposed wood harvest on town property on the agenda. Our scheduled referendum is on the 25th, and we're looking at a no mill increase. We're at 27 mills currently. Our Memorial Day event is going on for the first time since 2019. I just finished the flyover requests, which are extensive. So hopefully we're all set for that. We have our first in-person dedication in honor of Wade. We're going to dedicate a bench in the West Heartland Cemetery where Wade is right now. We're so excited about that. It'll have a beautiful slab of granite and a nice plaque on the top of it. We also dedicated our brand new plow truck to Wade. It's got a sticker on the driver's door. We're working on purchase of a new fire truck for the east side for East Heartland Fire Department. We're using some of the ARPA funds for that, at least to go towards it. So we're moving in pretty good direction. 1,000 things going at the same time, just like everybody else, but seems like we're in good shape. Thanks.
Norcan, Charlie. I saw him.
Charlie.
Big Charlie's up now.
Yeah, Town of North Canaan, we just got done with our, I don't know if our second or third budget hearing. It's been quite interesting this year, been almost stressful. They finally, we're going to be setting a date to go to a town meeting on June 1st. There's still people opposition that they want to put in the extra money for the raise that I think we talked about last month at the COG meeting. So I got a feeling it's going to be a very interesting town meeting on June 1st. The Region 1 school budget went through for us, for everybody. I know for a fact that our mill rate will be going up. I wish it was like the other towns that talked about it's going down or staying the same, but unfortunately, with a $745,000 Region 1 budget for town of North Canaan, we are going to be raising our mill rate on that. Our center of town is progressively slowly finishing. We had a meeting with the state DOT, and they're looking at the end of June. It's taken forever to do the paving blocks and the sidewalks, and been a bone of contention. They can't get into businesses, the phone rings off the wall. I just give them the DOT state inspector's number. They can answer questions. We're waiting on the utilities to move the power or the Comcast phone lines up the poles so our mast can work in the center of the town for railroad crossing. It's about half mast right now, and I can say the one good thing is not the power company that's holding it up, it's the other utilities. We do have a bridge study going on. We're looking at another replacement of a bridge on West Main Street, but it won't happen until 2024. We will be having a Memorial Day parade, which is the VFW puts that on every year. Short presentation at their Doughboy on the 30th. But like I said, the biggest conversation is going to be our budget. It's going to be very interesting. We do have a new fire marshal on duty, and starting June 2nd, I will have a new social service director will also come on board. So it's been a hectic couple of months. Thank you.
And I could just add that Gordon Ridgway out of Cornwall, I believe, jumped off, and Curtis Rand out of Salisbury had to leave for another meeting, but he said that the budget passed and everything else is going fantastic in Salisbury.
Anybody else on Zoom? Rob?
I don't believe so.
That's it. All right, that brings us down to John Feely, who I think is on.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me again. I'll be real quick. So under the COVID thing, we all are dealing with this current rise in the COVID case rates and trying to deal with that accordingly. Some people are going back to mask mandates or at least optional masks and such like that. So we're continuing to monitor that. At the same time, we're actually still holding our long-term recovery meetings. There was one yesterday. Unfortunately, I could not make. And then that's it for COVID for the most part. We are getting some questions on test kits and how to obtain them. And I will tell you, if you have a need for test kits, reach out to your local public health person and they can point you in the right direction for that. Under normal ops, Demis is obviously down quite a few positions. They're in the process of trying to get new positions started up. The new director as well as the new deputy commissioner. Well, I still call her new, but she's not. Are trying very hard to get some of those positions filled. So they're working that way. We had our first meeting of the school safety and security working group, which is awesome. We had, I think, 40 something participants. These folks are the folks that work on our school safety and security plans and SROs, such like that. It was an opportunity for us to get a group together to start the networking process of lessons learned, and it's already started. It worked out very, very well. So we have these folks working together and talking to each other and stuff like that. Also, the cybersecurity working group, I just bring this up again. They're trying to get their toolkit out, which is the cyber assessment toolkit. So if you want that, I am going to send that information out to everybody again at some point. I know some people wanted the information in regards to who to contact for that. So I'll send out Andrew Neblett. He's the chairman of that. I'll send that information out to everybody. The exercise, the annual exercise, government's exercise, the EPI, they call it, is scheduled for May 24th. You should have gotten 2 memos on that. It's an opportunity. It's a very low stress, I'll call it, type of exercise. We're working with the National Weather Service about a hurricane. And what there is there's injects in regards to having discussions on the impact to your municipality and how your unified command would handle that. So it should be a low stress, very low key type of exercise. But again, it's an opportunity to get your unified command folks together and, start to talk about some of the discussion points that will be raised. Working on some grants. We've had a couple meetings. We've had, the new EMD went out to, he made 2 visits, one to Watertown and one to Torrington over the last week. And there was a lot of discussions. Kendall Bubala was also on there, and she's in charge of the grants. So there's, our EMPG and Homeland Security grant programs are kicking up again for the 2021. So we're trying to catch up on all that stuff, which during COVID, we tried to keep up with it, but obviously got behind a little bit. So we're trying to get that all taken care of. We did have a meeting with Massachusetts Emergency Management. That went very, very well. We're going to continue to have those meetings. We do the same thing with New York because a lot of your municipalities, especially emergency services wise, cross the border on a pretty frequent basis. It's very important that we have communication with both New York and Massachusetts in regards to, there's emergency management folks and, keeping track of what each of are doing to assist each other. So we'll continue to network that way. Also, we have a New York emergency management meeting coming up, I think, beginning of June. And then MEMA will be meeting with them again at the end of June. Still trying to find a home for the MCB. We do have a couple things in the works. Also, the staffing of that, the volunteer staffing of that particular asset. We're working on that. We just had a meeting with the amateur radio folks to see if they can assist us with some of that. Never really thought of them, but what a knowledge-based group, especially when it comes to communication. So we're chatting with them, and then there's some other options that we're looking at also. But I think that's good for now, unless there's any questions. Don.
Thank you. Any questions for management?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Friend Mattiello came in the back door, so he's here. Okay. The next item had to do with the.
It's my third time before you.
Well, we like having you here.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll make sure you don't miss me. Hey, since last we were together, good news. State legislation, very significant bills passed. And I reported to you last time that 10 of the 12 recommendations that came out of the Northwest Corner planning team were addressed in the state legislation. Really, really significant bills. But also since we've met, if you've been reading the papers, some press accounts of school incidents. Again, many mental health providers reporting about their vacancies and their wait lists and some concerns about particularly how our children and adolescents are as we continue to face COVID restrictions and the COVID implications. We wanted to present to you, just real quick, an opportunity for a recovery-focused investment. Number one, two, that it creates a regional response, which is a pressure that you face, right? It's not all the funding can be independently spent by municipalities. And then to bring to your attention what is a significant need. The options are the two that we felt really the only solution was a local funding option. And there was a few things that we had in mind. Speed, how do we get the money out fast? How do we do it in an accountable way so that there are reports, very clear expectations, that there's a value to the work that's being done, so some kind of an evaluation of competitive proposals. And lastly, to your question last time, is there opportunity for additional funding that could be attracted? The only missing part last time was how do we, if this is going to be a regional response, what's one way to think about it? And that proposal came out to you from the COG in your attachment C. I'm here to answer any questions you have, be helpful in any way possible. So I do an individual decision for you. You may like one of the ideas, both of the ideas. You may not be in a position, you've already committed your funds, but we'd like to take this as far as we possibly
can. Yeah, and Brian and I had a conversation. There's 4 of the towns belong to Farmington Valley Health, and they've come out with a similar proposal for an outreach coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. I know at least one town I can through to Bristol. I think there's, we need multiple approaches, one being from the coalition that Brian's representing, one being from Barnstable Valley Health, one being from Bristol Health, whatever. I know for Barkhampton, we're still pondering what's the best thing to do, which organization to go with, which coordinator to fund, that kind of thing. So there's still the decision process. I don't know about the other towns where they are in this activity, but
We're in a similar situation where our committee is currently has that information in hand. That I forwarded all this yesterday when I got it. I mentioned to Eleanor when I walked in, there is certainly something going on where people are impacted much more significantly now than at the beginning of the pandemic. We're seeing it on what should be the tail end, but we're coming out of this thing. It's even for a small community, we've got tons of issues going on. So that's where we're at.
I know when Chris Leone came to Goshen to express where the budget was going to be for Region 6, he spoke about the mental health issues at Region 6 and how many kids are participating in Greenwoods and Charlotte. And it's part of Goshen's budget that's going to the schools of what we're paying Region 6 to help these kids out. But we also have, the Carlisle Fund here in town, Carlisle Brooks, that is for everything from the chin up, eyes, nose, ears, and teeth. But we only spent around 29,000 out of the 60. We sent $32,000 to Charlotte and Hungerford to help out the kids. I don't know where Charlotte is spending this money, but Brian, it's your job to find out where it's being spent. If it's for dental, eyeglasses, or mental health, you should check into that because we don't get any reports where money is going.
Yeah. So it's unreimbursed expenses, ED mostly, also on the behavioral health side. So any children that are receiving services that either are uninsured or can't meet their co-pays and they're on a financial need, we then pull over from the Carlisle to fill in the unreimbursed portion. That's pretty much been that way for 20 years. It's called, it's got a process that we have to validate though through it that there is these unmet needs or unmet expenses. So we do have to demonstrate to the state of Connecticut though each year what every dollar of any of these types of funds, and we are. If you would like more, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, sure, because there's nothing in my record since I've been in office.
No, yeah.
Where the money's being used, so.
Yeah, that process has not been set up to report back kind of thing. But, yeah.
I don't know if anything goes back to Bank of America, because, since I sit at the board of Bank of America and the church.
Yeah, I don't know. We have about 25 of those funds that are set, that which is a unique one because of the ear, nose, throat situation. But because we don't do pediatrics inpatient, so it's all really been through the behavioral health and the ED that we pull it over. But it'll be finance that does that, and I'd be glad to ask them for a report.
Brian, would there be reports on this money? Is this a 3-year? The way I read it was that it was a 3-year proposal commitment.
Yeah,
and then would this create an artificial hole after the 3 years? So in the 4th year, would you be coming back and looking for more funding from the towns, or is this
So
not?
remember, there's 2 proposals. One is the coordinator and the other is the pro-social activities. The pro-social, you're going to take the money, and you're going to spend it, right? You got to create the activities immediately. So that's where the speed came in and accountability. So we were creating a competitive process through the community foundation to get these funds out, right? So to answer your question on accountability, we want to see the proposals. We want to know that the geographies are going to be targeted, number of people, what the activity is, and validate it. With respect to the position, that is more in line with your question. What would happen after 3 years? And the only thing that I can tell you is that these positions, because they're popping up elsewhere, people are valuing them, and I think it's going to have its proof, certainly within that 3 years, that this is making a difference in the schools, with the parents who are calling, people who are trying to navigate the system, right service, right time, right place. This is missing today. So all I can tell you is that my belief is that it will prove itself, and there's going to be a moment where we can't do without this position. Whether that's private philanthropy or a particular organization takes it on, or state funding somehow comes in and says we've got to be part of it. I can't tell you what that looks like, but I know that there will be interest in this, and it will prove itself to be very valuable. We wouldn't have put this before you.
And can you set a deadline where you need to come in, or?
Well, the pro-social stuff, we are up against it. I got asked last time, how quickly can we turn this around? And I got out there and said 45 days. I've already alerted some, like YMCA and other organizations that might be thinking about it in the event that we are able to secure these funds. So I gotta beat 45 days. I want to be accountable, but we gotta get it out there. It's this summer, right? Kids are leaving school mid-June, and I'm not talking about athletics for all of them. That may be some of the proposals, but not everyone's, movement specialist. They really, we need science things and all this, and Park and Rec's doing some of it, but we're up against it. We need as much recreational, pro-social going on in this communities, this communities.
What about the position?
The position, I would want to, as you would, post candidates, but we do need to find a placement. Greenwoods, I know, is very interested, and calls probably would be, and I'm not going to get in the way of that. I think those are more certainly good, strong community-based programs. We would be a default if we had to, but then you'd want to post, and then you got to bring the person on. So that's going to be a little longer. I would say summer's end would be the goal there.
Any other questions for Brian?
I mean, I'm just in a little bit of a quandary. Not that I don't believe this is very, very needed, but we have grown our Park and Rec so that we can incorporate more social activities for our seniors and our kids, and we're still trying to grow it. Same with our social service director, who used to work 20 hours a week. That person retired. Now they're going to be 40 hours a week. We also give $5,000 a year, which is not a lot to Greenwoods, but I don't know if everybody else gives to Greenwoods already. Probably you do. I just feel like maybe we would be benefit us if we just were able to keep some of the money in our own towns, grow our own programs a little bit, because we already have people in place that can help. I mean, people in town know to call our social service coordinator, to find avenues that they can get help. And we have a lot of nonprofits around us that they have a network with. So I think it's it's a valuable idea that I'm concerned then spreading it out even more and not keeping it in the town a little bit. I don't know. And as far as getting money, I mean, for us to try to get money for the pro-social rec activities, we could never do it in 45 days unless I called like another town meeting. I can't just write the check on about everybody else, but
Our
yeah.
process is a little more involved. It's the ARPA committee board select.
Right, I have an ARPA committee, and we've spent the first amount, now it's not coming to June 1st. It just takes longer in theory, it's not.
I knew all those things, which is why we started this conversation, I think back in November, in anticipation. I mean, your points are well taken. There is a demonstration of regional response though. And I don't know where you stand with that, but you are going to be pressured on that at some point. That it can't just, all the money didn't come just for individual town spending. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, we are committed to use a good portion of our ARPA funds for those type of activities, but to our program. So I just don't know how everybody else feels about regionalizing it. And will that person, if it's one person, I just get concerned, we have 20 something towns. If that really, I don't know. It's a lot.
I think that. So for the city of Torrington, we, our council did elect to declare 10 million of that as lost revenue. So we are beholden to spend the funds locally. And our reporting mechanism has to show that. But as you may already know, we've also committed about $2.7 million to push back into the community with community partner projects, which I think this qualifies for. So the application process is, on our local level through our ARPA committee. There's a sub committee of municipal board representation that will review those grant applications, make a recommendation to the council, and just the council would then have to decide. I would agree. I think the 45 days is a heavy lift because the grant rounds haven't been opened yet. But I do see an opportunity for this funding. I mean, Torrington obviously is, because it's based on per capita, covering the lion's share of this. But I would suggest that we keep in touch, and as soon as that grant round opens up, encourage this application to come to us through those grant funds. But they have to be Torrington, they have to be specific to Torrington residents or a Torrington benefit.
Just a quick question. Brian, in sending this over, we also have an ARPA committee. What should I use as they always want the name of the group. What would be the best group name to call this? Thanks.
Yeah, it's the Northwest Connecticut Community Foundation, and then specifically the board of the Building Healthier Communities Fund. That was the vehicle I was suggesting to get funds out with speed and accountability.
Got it. Thanks.
Both parts of it? Both
parts. We would award both parts. So the first, we'd be looking for an organization to house through the fiduciary. The money would go then to hire the person. And the second case is we would receive competitive applications for pro-social recreational activities and award them.
It sounds like there's a lot of different decision processes all going in parallel here, so. it's gonna be hard for you to get-
Yours and then this, right? So speed, I can only guarantee speed on our side.
Okay.
I'm chairman of the Building Healthier Communities Fund. And the Community Foundation is aware of this, so would be primed to work, but I'm also hearing today that this might not happen, so it's fine. I understand.
All right. Any other questions for Brian?
Brian, is there any grants available for your program?
So the Building Healthier Communities Fund itself could certainly be a consideration, both for the position and for getting some of the pro-social activities. I wanted that to be icing on the cake and sort of match some municipal funds. Again, I don't know if you're, everything I've read, you do have to demonstrate regional responses, and it's millions. And so I don't know if that's been covered by this COG. I'm not aware of that. And that's why I'm trying to serve up an option for you. And
I think the thing that changed with the ARPA money, is they went to this $10 million threshold for lost revenue.
Right.
And that changed the ground rules. Initially, when you looked at the ground rules, a lot of it had to do with the social purpose. Once it went to the lost revenue, the towns had a lot more flexibility, and a lot of towns, including ours, are spending more money towards capital improvements and that kind of activity, and less towards.
And
social
that's been
purpose.
locked. Yeah, and now what we're seeing is this demand for
social service.
Yes, which is the spirit, originally intended to have a recovery response and a regional one. So,
Brian, if only some of the towns participate in this, is it still possible? Or and if you give the money to this initiative, are the funding returns for the pro-social activities stuff guaranteed to come back to our communities?
So, listen, it's gonna be a little harder, but let's just say Harrington and Torrington do this. I mean, we would have to do slots available to Harrington and just put a per person value on what we're awarding and say, Harrington, you have 27 slots here. and something like that. I mean, that's the only fair way to do it, right?
How do you see
That would take
that?
47 days.
So, I might need 50.
Yeah.
How do you see that pro-social rec opportunities? I know it's described here, but
Yeah, so
sort of like, you know,
we
and
would issue like an RFP, and we would pre-select the organizations. They're going to be named. PAL would be certainly one of them.
Okay.
The YMCA. I wouldn't put it past some towns, Park and Recs for applying as long as they opened it up, to other communities. But anyone who's got ideas on what to do, Kids Play, I know would be making an application.
those are the organizations we anticipate applying to our community partners projects also.
Right, that's
So,
Torrington. right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying to give a
specific,
regional
right.
solution to this.
Right.
And it might be harder. Kids Play applies to you. Harrington's not in a position to do that, but with a little bit of funds, we all of a sudden have a bigger pot.
Bigger
And
pool.
we're going out and at scale, suddenly PAL doubles its size for a particular program, and who benefits but Northwest Connecticut, right? Not just.
The concern I would have though, let's say you have kids whose parents are working, I mean, let's say they're in Warren or something and they have to get to Torrington. How does that work? When it's not in your own town.
Eleanor goes and picks them up.
Eleanor is supposed to pick them up, so,
On a
I mean, I
district
understand the
bus.
idea of having it be all in one
They
place.
might have to build in a transportation.
On the transit district.
You're right.
We're pretty spread out, that's the only.
It's always a challenge.
Right.
Torrington is a far haul for Harwinton residents. It's tough.
It's all downhill.
It is. It's tough getting back. That's the problem.
It's 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes from Torrington to Harrington, but it's 20 minutes from Harrington to Torrington.
That's right.
That's what part of Harwinton you're in. All right. And we appreciate what you're trying to accomplish.
I'm not coming back a fourth time, Don, so,
Okay.
except for other reasons. but,
Okay, Brian, I
this
know
is
what
a-
you're trying to accomplish. It's the right thing to do. It's just every town makes their decisions based on variety of factors.
Everybody's busy.
I'll let you go.
I'm not getting pushback regarding the system.
All right.
I'm happy to.
That's good.
I'm happy to.
Next item,
One person is
well, we
not
still have a
getting
quorum.
pushback.
We still do have a quorum.
Yards is expensive.
Gene, the next item is your recommendation from nominating committee.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Inspect you there.
Yes, I was trying to click my mute button and was unsuccessful 3 times.
We can hear you now.
Great. Thank you, Rob, for beating me to the share. So as presented, here's our slate of officers and for fiscal year 22-23. And as you can see, we have a vacancy in the treasurer position. And we would love to have Rob in the bylaws. Can we add someone prior, or does it now have to only go from the floor? Next month at the actual elections.
Rob, you're muted.
I couldn't.
Looking for his button.
I could not find my mute button while I was sharing my screen. Yeah, I actually, let me see, I have to, let me double, I think you, what was the question again, just to be sure?
Can we add anyone to the slate? Or does it, or is it only now from the floor nominations at the next meeting when we do the elections?
Yeah, no, I think it's nominations from the floor now, which would then become part of the slate for approval in the June meeting.
Okay.
Basically, do we have any volunteers? I can tell you, I did it in the past, and all you do is sign checks once a month. Not much more than that, and review the financial statements, but it's a very low pressure job, so it would be nice to see somebody volunteer for that position.
You're good, Len.
I'll nominate Tom White.
I second
I'll
that.
second. Yeah, right, Tom.
I'm not giving it to
You don't want to wait a month. I'll stop that.
Congratulations, Tom.
Wait, I didn't hear the name.
Tom White.
He was Shanghai.
If we can third that, I think that I would totally go for that.
Okay.
Tom, we don't want to put you on the spot, mostly.
But we don't vote today, that's just a nomination that.
Right. I just wanted to hear from Tom if.
Well, that works for me. I can get up here once a month or twice a month or whatever.
And Sarah will be happy not to have to drive to Park Hampstead.
I mean, it's a beautiful round.
It's only a 1-year sentence, term.
Nice job, Rob.
Again,
So
I
that's
hear
all-
volunteers.
Yeah, it's wicked.
All right, so that takes care of that item for today.
Don, do we need to do a motion or anything on that?
We made a motion, we just didn't vote.
Now we actually vote on the officers at the June meeting.
Oh, there you go.
Right, I didn't know if the slate needed to be accepted or any formal thing like that.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go back on mute.
All right, next item then is approval of the minutes from the April 21st meeting. Is there?
Second.
Do we have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Mike seconded. Any corrections, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, approval financial statement, which we're going to be provided. Do we have a financial statement?
We do not right at this moment.
All right, so we'll table that one to next month.
Mhm.
And last formal item, there's a request that we authorize the executive director to enter a memorandum of understanding with the town of Ridgefield and Demus, et cetera, as stated in the agenda for a vertical lift antenna system. Is there a motion to approve? That was Tom.
Second.
Mike seconded. Rob, you want to do the 30-second summary of this?
Yeah, looks like John Field's off the call. This goes back for some time with Demis. This was a initiative for basically what how you read it. It's they use a drone to establish a remote antenna connection when there's a lack of service for emergency services and emergency management and coordination. So there was a long drawn out process because this isn't something that's you buy off the shelf from a Walmart. This is a sole source manufacturing item, and we had to get that approved through Demis and ultimately have a custodial owner, which Ridgefield is graciously accepted to be the custodial owner, and going through all of the procedures to procure this. We're finally at the finish line, and essentially we just have to enter into an agreement between the COG, Ridgefield, and Demis for this VLAS system. That's the 30-second.
Any questions on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I asked to make a motion on that. Just to put it down.
Tom, you made the motion, right?
I second.
And Mike seconded.
Thank you.
All right, any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
I was gonna say, I
I
wanted
second.
to point out that we're finishing on time here.
Yeah.
I noticed we were, that's why I jumped on it right away.
Is that before you
Is
start?
there a second to that motion?
Yeah.
Second for it.
All right.
They have no time.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Don.
I'm sorry.
I mean, let's-
I just lost my train of thought. Yes.
There is lunch
There
here.
are
So I went back to my
sandwiches.
last, I went back to their minutes.
There's one over
They
there?
haven't met since April.
They haven't.
Well, actually, that makes sense. Maybe that's. Well, I'm.
Did you have sandwiches in back? If anybody wants sandwiches.
On their last agenda. They talk about
The hardest thing to keep track of is
They-
all the bills.
The last one was like.
Oh, of course, yeah, I wasn't sure. I know that's that's important.
Monday night or something? You know, that whole water sports thing.
Yeah.
It's a violation.
Feel
of
better,
zoning.
Rob.
Yeah.
Imagine.
The meeting is, next meeting is May 19th, next Thursday, 6 PM at WZBG. Should we go?
Probably.
Yeah, I don't go.
I think I can, because we don't have a Board of Finance.
I'm going to turn the my Zoom connection off. Thank you, Emily, Sarah, and Casey.
We let them know.
Big help.
All right, take
Enjoy-
care.
enjoy the fun.
Want me to
Okay.
save you a sandwich?
As long as it's not on the counter for 24 hours.
All right, take it easy.
I'll touch base with you guys at about, let's see, I gotta get my 10, maybe 1:30 or so.
All right, will do. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And actually,